J. Dyer and the PSYOP to Subvert Orthodox Christianity in America. The radicalization of American converts and the impending schism of post-COVID orthodoxy. By Benjamin Cabe. March 20, 2023. Editorial note: the use of PSYOP in the title is a play off of what Dyer frequently accuses others of. It is not meant that the author believes there is a conspiracy or PSYOP from Dyer and company. Laughing face. For a list of those involved in this behavior, click on this footnote. 1. I didn't want to write about this topic. I wasn't planning on writing about topic. But the last few days have proven it to be a necessity, because it is indicative of a larger issue facing the Orthodox Church today. In order to provide the necessary context, though, I am obliged to detail the development of cultural changes as well as speak about myself more than I please. The result is going to be both long and revealing. So bear with me. When I graduated from seminary in 2019, I returned to a world far different than the one I left 3 years prior. Political polarization was at an all-time high, college administrations bent the knee to the demands of unstable student rioters, intellectual elites caved to the pressure of the woke mob, and the media fully embraced the system of gender self-identification. I was not alone in my observations. A new generation, cognitive distortions as truth. In 2019, Jonathan Haidt and Greg Lukianoff published a detailed study of cultural changes on college campuses entitled, The Coddling of the American Mind. Picking up where Alan Bloom left off in his 1987 book, The Closing of the American Mind, Haidt and Lukianoff summarize the sociological turn with what they call the three great untruths. 1. The untruth of fragility: what doesn't kill you makes you weaker. 2. The untruth of emotional reasoning: always trust your feelings. 3. The untruth of us versus them: life is a battle between good and evil people. 2. When Greg initially encountered these budding social doctrines on the college campus in 2013 to 2014, he recognized in them an uncanny similarity to a series of well-documented cognitive distortions. 3. Years earlier, Greg was at the end of his rope. He was ready to end it all. But instead, he enrolled in cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, a proven technique developed by Aaron Beck in the mid-20th century. Cognitive distortions is the name Beck gave to patterns of thinking that he observed causing interpersonal and intrapersonal dissonance like overgeneralization, jumping to conclusions, all-or-nothing thinking, and so on. The goal of CBT is to intentionally deconstruct unhelpful patterns of thinking and develop new neural pathways to transform how one sees and thinks about the self, others, and the world. Fortunately for Greg, and many, many others, dealing with these cognitive distortions through CBT changed his life. So imagine his concern when he began to see widespread acceptance and litigation enforcement of cognitive distortions. Although one could argue that the Western world has been on the road to perdition for quite some time, John and Greg could not help but wonder what had changed to cause this rapid acceleration of untruth on college campuses specifically. They found their answer in intergenerational difference expert Jean Twenge. In her 2017 book, iGen, Twenge demonstrates that the concurrent rise of depression, technology, and social media, specifically, is not coincidental. Twenge notes that the generation of kids born after 1995, which she calls iGen, now, Gen Z, is generally less rebellious, less casual sex, taking less risks, etc., than the classic 1980s teenager, but also far more depressed. John and Greg summarize. Twenge shows that iGen suffers from far higher rates of anxiety and depression than did millennials at the same age and higher rates of suicide. And yet members of iGen are obsessed with safety. 4. It is not primarily physical safety that iGen is concerned with, though, it is emotional safety. The development of this complex can be traced back to the obsession over physical safety of children in the 1970s and 1980s. As the authors point out, keeping kids safe is a good thing. But as a result of an overcorrection that peaked in the mid-90s, which included an unhealthy focus on emotional safety, kids would grow up without developing the independence and resilience necessary to be functional members of society. 5. What is an unhealthy focus on emotional safety? For the answer to this question, John and Greg cite Nick Haslam's 2016 book, Concept Creep, Psychology's Expanding Concepts of Harm and Pathology. In Haslam notes that, over time, the definition of words such as trauma change from objective to subjective reality. The focus on keeping children safe from kidnappers and bullies shifted from an objective physical event, example a kidnapping, a punch in the face, to a subjective emotional experience, example I don't feel safe, he hurt my feelings. 6. Eventually, the word violence underwent a similar change, from objective physical abuse to the phrase words are violence. 7. Emanating unabashedly from the 2009 hate crimes bill and culminating in the idea that people who calmly disagree with transgender ideology are committing violence against a minority community. It doesn't take much to connect this with the oft-repeated, nonsensical woke comeback, why do you want me to die? Why do you want me to not exist? Somewhere amid all this madness, the Orthodox Church began seeing an enormous uptick in American inquirers. And then COVID happened. Enter, culture wars. To say that COVID further polarized the political divide would be an understatement. To pass by in silence the divide that this also exasperated in orthodoxy would be a mistake. But first, more context. Sometime between 2017 to 2018, seemingly every ambitious Orthodox convert, clergy, and monastic decided that they needed to start a YouTube channel. Enter, the Orthodox YouTuber. This was not something that had been done before. The Dyer drama, 2023. The origins. 3 days ago, on St. Patrick's Day, March 17, 2023, I witnessed an exchange between an Orthodox Christian priest and Dyer. Now, if you don't know who Dyer is, you're not alone. I had heard his name here and there but never really cared to engage in any of the drama that, I heard, surrounded him as a YouTube commentator. I still do not care to engage. But on March 17th, March 18th, and March 19th, and now March 20th, I did. Allow me to explain. Father David Galloway, a student at St. Vladimir's Seminary, recently gave a talk in which he noted that 97% of Antiochian and OCA clergy that he surveyed would not recommend content from Dyer, Orthodox Ethos, The Will, Orthodoxy in Dialogue, or Public Orthodoxy, as they produce serious pastoral issues in the parish. 8. I do not know the details but somehow Jay caught wind of Father David's talk and began engaging with him on Twitter, which produced the following exchange. Dyer via Twitter. OC gay event, obviously said with some sarcasm on Dyer's part, cool rainbow. Where are the pious tone policers who call me out, calling this out? The ministers and choir directors assembled for the 14th annual gathering of Spiritual Sounds, the brainchild of Anthony Donovan, seen here on the left of Rev. Amanda. A beautiful evening of music and solidarity. Dyer again. At David Galloway, I understand you give lectures saying to avoid me. Is this an event you support? Father David Galloway in response to Dyer. No idea what this event is or who any of these people are, but most likely not. It does not appear to adhere to the OCA statement on same-sex relationships and sexual identity. Dyer in response to Father Galloway. Glad to hear, can I have an explanation as to why you feel the need to warn people against me? Would that mean you agree with Bishop Benjamin's mandates that shut down churches, forbidding icon veneration and decisions to me and clergy who align with me? Father David Galloway in response to Dyer. You keep wanting to assume that I must disagree with one or more positions you hold, but the reason I advised those priests and bishops to not recommend your work has nothing to do with your positions on social matters but with the way you conduct your discourse. 1/6. When you have a friendly interlocutor, such as at Gospel Simplicity and at Jonathan Pago, whom are named here by their handles, since you reconciled, you present valuable conversations, but I find your debating style distasteful, stirring the passions of yourself and your audience. 2/6. I understand that drives clicks, but it does more harm than good. There are a lot of young men and women who find out about the church through your videos, but I wish you spent more time telling them to love Christ rather than simply hating the world. 3/6. My talk was based on a survey OCA and Antiochian clergy where only 3.4% recommended your content to be shared. Similar numbers to Orthodox ethos, OID, public orthodoxy, and the will, all of which create significant pastoral issues for clergy. 4/6. Most priests I talk to feel the same way, they just do not want to run afoul of your audience, so they ignore you. I was asked to present on my survey results at a conference by the priest running the conference, so I did. 5/6. You have God-given gifts of intelligence, articulation, and verbal fluency. I have great hopes that you will one day find a better way to use those gifts to serve the church. I have no desire to attack you, but at this time I do not recommend your work. 6/6. I thought Father David was quite charitable. So I decided to share his posts. I did so summarizing his statistics and saying I agree that Dyer is talented. But not long after posting this, I began to receive texts from friends with screenshots of Jay's Twitter timeline. He had blocked me on Twitter before I ever spoke to or about him, but we will get to that. He responded to Father David thusly. Dyer decides to insult yet another member of the clergy. When you have a friendly interlocutor, such as at Gospel Simplicity and at Jonathan Pago, whom are named here by their handles, since you reconciled, you present valuable conversations, but I find your debating style distasteful, stirring the passions of yourself and your audience. 2/6. Dyer responds with, I'm curious, does your being overweight imply you are stirring up the passions for dinner? Jay then began to claim that this, aka the attacks against him and / or the OCGI event as he called it, was a coordinated effort between Cabe, me, and others. Dyer tweets back. This is not some unheard of, random OCA scandal event. This a problem in certain areas of specific bishoprics, and I have talked to several priests and archpriests who have dealt with all this firsthand. They are coordinating with Cabe and others, leaves a link to Monomikos, link is incomplete. This is where I decided to dig in. Dyer had slandered me before. I ignored it. Then he slandered me again. I ignored it. And again. But as I began to notice a pattern of false information being shared and touted as truth by Dyer, by this, I mean slander against individuals such as Father Andrew Stephen Damick, Father David Galloway, Archbishop Benjamin, and the entire OCA, generally, I decided to call him out. Wholesome Henry responds. Well, Jay had the chance to respond appropriately and decided to hurl insults and continue in delusional conspiracy about Fr. Andrew Damick and Fr. Galloway being pro-LGBTQ per that dumb photo that's been circulating. That is actually slander. Also might I say Jay blocked me before I had ever spoken to or about him. Ever. And he continues to slander me in this cowardly way. I can tell you that everything he said about me is entirely false. I've spoken to others that have had this happen to them as well. So let me ask you, how can you trust a man who unwittingly spreads blatant lies? It's a pattern. He continues. Coordinating with me on what, Jay? Some random tweets of Jay being his usual self with his unhinged retardation. He is asking about Father Damick and Father Galloway if the random photo is vile, and then he is implying that it was blessed by them. He showed an event and then falsely mentioned there are systemic problems in the OCA. He said he is being targeted, but we all know this only comes from his narcissism. What exactly did Jay claim about me that was slander? For that we will have to go back to December 6, 2022. See, I had posted an article warning people about Father Peter Here's an Orthodox ethos in November of 2022. This article was a slightly edited excerpt from a document I wrote, 2021, about Here's out of concern for what I see online. Discord, Reddit, elsewhere. I shared my concerns and document via email with a few bishops, as they are not chronically online or in these chat groups like most of today's youth, and friends. But I didn't publish it anywhere. Until November of 2022. In November of 2022, I began to see an upsurge in concern over here's an Orthodox ethos, OE. A coterie of individuals independently observing OE's online behavior, such as telling inquirers to find a different priest or not listen to their bishop if X, Y, or Z, started to wonder if this was here's attempt to sow the seeds of schism. As a result, I decided to post a portion of what I had previously written, as a caution to such inquirers. As I suspected, posting this article publicly and under my name brought with it a multitude of difficulties, the least of which was online slander. It actually contributed to a fallout with the parish my family was attending at the time, which I later reflected on in a thread on Twitter. This is important to note here because of the recent slander of Jay, who said I was kicked out of my parish. That's not what happened. The priest and I had a few disagreements, one of them being here's, another being the fact that he was not visiting his parishioners in the hospital, or following up with parishioners who have not been coming to church. For what it's worth, I called this pastoral malpractice. Jay responded, "Why were you booted from your parish?" Note here that he was responding to me while I was still blocked from him. So I was not notified of this comment, nor could I view it on Twitter, as being blocked hides people's tweets from you. Nonetheless, a few weeks pass and we show up at church one Sunday morning to a normal enough liturgy. But after liturgy was not normal. Right after the Our Father at coffee hour, the priest got right in my face and began yelling at me. He said things like, "If you don't like it here then you can leave and not come back." My calm response was, "You and I can disagree on certain things and my family and I can still come to church, because it's the mysteries we are coming for," at which point he told me, "No. We can't. You have to take it all here," insinuating, everything I think or none of it. The short story is, my family decided to never go back to that parish. It was not just the priest that disagreed with me about here's, though. Before the event above, where the priest yelled at me, January 1, 2023, one of my friends in that parish visited me at my house to discuss my then recent article on Father Peter. We had a conversation in which I detailed why I thought it was important to push back against here's version of orthodoxy. I explained to him that such rigorism often leads to despair, and can lead to spiritual and physical death, suicide. He disagreed, but we agreed to disagree and parted cordially. A few weeks later, on St. Nicholas feast day, December 6, 2022, this came across my Twitter feed. Father Basil tweeted, "To my Ortho fam. Please pray for Zachariah, right? I didn't know him very well, but I have received word that he committed suicide yesterday, in the wake of his mother's death. Please pray for his soul, may God have mercy on him." I was heartbroken. So I reposted it with an entreaty for prayers for the soul of Zachariah. Over the course of the day, I received, from various people that saw my post asking for prayers, other information that greatly disturbed me. Just a month prior to committing suicide, Zach posted on Facebook that he was giving up on becoming Orthodox because he isn't perfect and he can't be perfect enough to be baptized. Who was telling this catechumen that he had to be perfect to receive baptism? I posted again, commenting that this needed to be looked into because it was not right. Theoria, at Theoria TV posted from that tweet. Seriously, the Orthodox Church needs to look into this for spiritual abuse. This is not okay. Who was Zachariah's spiritual advisor? Sponsor? In response to this tweet, Father Basil tweeted, "To my Ortho fam. Please pray for Zachariah, right? I didn't know him very well, but I have received word that he committed suicide yesterday, in the wake of his mother's death. Please pray for his soul, may God have mercy on him." Zachariah Schremer posted. Funny how the church wants me to be basically perfect before I can ever even start to think about my baptism. I came to Orthodoxy because I'm a sinner who needs help, not because I want to be glorified by everyone around me or whatever else. What's the point of all this if I have to be without sin for a certain extended period before I can even start participating in the mysteries? My spiritual father is expecting far more out of me than I can accomplish, and it's deterring me a lot. At this point I wonder, why would I want eternal life, when I can't even stand the life I have currently? This world is a joke, honestly. Send me wherever, cause I just don't care anymore. I'm already in hell. The response was 50/50ths or maybe 90/10ths. Hundreds of people agreed. This was not okay. But the most vocal of the online voices, as typical, were those who decided to galvanize this tweet against me to claim that I was using the suicide of a catechumen to virtue signal and build social capital or further my agenda to attack a priest. Here's. I did not think Here's was his spiritual father or priest. Here's doesn't have a bishop, so he doesn't have parishioners. I was surprised by the backlash. That's not what I meant at all. But cancel culture grasps at straws. Here I want to note that suicide is ultimately the choice of the individual, and indicative of many warring internal feelings and emotions. While no one but the individual is responsible for the act, it is important for clergy to recognize the signs and attempt to intervene when necessary. And certainly not to add more to the mental/emotional burden. I wasn't happy that my tweet was taken this way. It grated on my nerves throughout the day. And I even began to argue with one of Zach's friends, accusing him of not being there for him. And I immediately regretted it. I apologized. And we made up. I regained composure and mentioned that I was concerned that what Zach was focused on in Orthodoxy, per his Facebook page, was the exact thing that is being socially pushed by a bunch of online Orthodox content creators. And to my surprise, his friend agreed. A comment from an undisclosed friend reads as, "You know, I could likely agree with you there. I told Zach a million times to focus more on his community and not the end times theories that were driving him mad. No one told him he should be focusing on those things, exactly the opposite. You can't control someone though. Obsession with the end times, the Antichrist, the mark of the beast, things I all laid out as concerns for Father Peter Here's and company, as aspects of the sectarian mindset." Some articles he posted. Freemasonry and the rise of ecumenicism in the Orthodox Church. Orthodox reflections. Get ready for the beast system. Cash to be removed, new CBDC currency can be shut off. This was a pattern that I had seen over and over again. There is even a specific parish where this has happened multiple times, catechumen suicide. Likewise, others shared their personal, similar, experience online, both before and after, spurred on by these posts about Zach. November 16, 2022, "This is not Zach, but someone else." Orthodox tweeted. "Sometimes I feel like my priest wants me to be a perfect Christian before I'm even baptized." December 14, 2022. Orthodox tweeted. "I think I've given up becoming Orthodox. Yes, I know it's the truth, but I can't accomplish seemingly perfection as a prerequisite to be baptized. Forgive me." Elsewhere on Reddit, the following conversation broke out. "Do we have to be sinless to receive the sacraments?" I just wanted to make a response this post, which was locked. It hit very close to my experience and heart hurts for Zachariah. I feel this is an important discussion. Please respect the reasons that post was locked and do not comment in a way that will get this post locked. This is not about specific people, this is about a pattern. Read the full post here. There is much more of this kind of thing floating around the internet. It's a clear pattern indicative of something that is happening in Orthodoxy. And it's not because a certain minority of people are trying to subvert the church. All arrows point to sacramental rigorism, the kind that the so-called genuine Orthodox Church practices, which has likewise led to similar results. The issue itself was and is important to me. but I was distraught by the social interpretation of my post, even if from just a minority of loudmouths on Twitter. So I decided to publicly apologize. And then I deleted all of the tweets on my account. That's when I separated Theoria, catechetical resource, from Wholesome Henry, personal, general. Unsurprisingly, though, a number of these accounts that accused me of using a suicide to continue my agenda were those of J. Dyer, David Aran, and others of their ilk. J. Dyer tweeted, Ben Cape of Theoria TV, the BFF of Father Damick, who previously tried to go after me, is going after orthobros and priests, while Cape himself is capitalizing on a catechumen who committed suicide to virtue signal. As usual, Cape is sus. This was the first time, to my knowledge, that J. Dyer had tweeted about me. In the same string, he continued by suggesting that I was allied with Fordham and intent on subverting orthodoxy. J. Dyer tweeted, unfortunately they are allied with Fordham and company who are intent on subverting orthodoxy. They as in Cape and Father Damick. I honestly found this laughable. Anyone who knows Father Andrew Damick or I would immediately brush off such a critique. Fordham, if you don't know, is the institutional home of public orthodoxy which is engaged in promoting LGBTQ+ lifestyle acceptance in the church. If J, or others, had done even a modicum of research, he would see that I have been speaking about LGBT issues for the last 10+ years, and have been published as doing so. Not to mention this is the exact topic of my book, which states that Christian anthropology precludes the possibility that a man can be a woman or vice versa. According to J, though, I am a subversive psyop plant intent on taking down him and traditional orthodoxy. J. Dyer tweeted, these are subversives. They are opposed to me and everything I do and have been for years. And to top it off, he calls me Skittles, his preferred phrase for calling someone gay. J. Dyer tweeted, he's a Skittles man, clear as day. Although amusing, I figured it was not worth responding to. So I didn't. A month later, Dyer continues his slander claiming that I was involved in a campaign to get him excommunicated. He then posts a link to a video stream he made 3 years prior which supposedly refutes Father Andrew Damick and myself. A month after that, February 27, 2023, I retweeted a screenshot photo that someone posted saying that their priest advised they stay away from J. Dyer, Orthodox Ethos, and Father Josiah Trinium, saying this was good advice. This was the first time I ever spoke about J publicly. I later deleted the post because people continued to ask me about Father Josiah Trinium, who was a casualty of the post. I clarified that I was mainly retweeting with respect to his but, per Twitter, people continued to inquire. I got tired of responding and deleted the tweet. But not before Dyer saw it. J. Dyer tweeted, Ben Gaby. Ben Gaby is a joke. Rachel Wilson tweeted back, this little hive is obsessive about you. J. Dyer tweeted, because they're Skittles. Rachel Wilson tweeted back, ew. J. Dyer tweeted, the likers of his post are literally Antifa and Universalist and RC LOL. Ben Gaby deleted his post LOL. A few weeks later, Dyer retweets a post by David Aran, of Patristic Faith website, which I don't recommend in case anyone is wondering, laughing face, stating that Normodox gays see a man commit suicide be like who was his spiritual fathers. I bet he's the reason this man ended his life. Note that this was March 10, 2023, over 3 months after I had deleted all the tweets on Theoria. And during which time I did not mention Zach again. The real Medwhite, who is David Erhan, posted about the previous posts that were mentioned about Zachariah earlier. About the unfortunate suicide. Theoria, at Theoria TV posted from that tweet. Seriously, the Orthodox Church needs to look into this for spiritual abuse. This is not okay. Who was Zachariah's spiritual advisor? Sponsor. This was Erhan's response/tweet. Normie docs gays see a man commit suicide be who was his spiritual fathers, I bet he's the reason this man ended his life. David Aran tweeted from a separate account saying Ben Cabe is most likely on Golitsin's payroll and is his operative. What's funny is that I've never actually spoken to or had any communication with ABP Golitsin. But this kind of behavior is part and parcel of J. Dyer and crew, to suspect that anyone opposing them is conspiring to take them down. This includes archbishops, the CIA, the FBI, and on and on and on. David Erhan tweeted. Someone can have legitimate disagreements with him and that's fine. For example, I disagree with him on corrective baptism and his relegation of ECONOMIA in reception. But what douchebags who use people's suicides to push their agenda like Ben Cabe, aka Theoria TV, do is unacceptable. Ben Cabe is most likely on Golitsin's payroll and is his operative. There's nothing else that explain his behavior. People like Cabe will point out people's canonical irregularities as if it's their fault, but won't talk against open preaching of heresy by people like Golitsin. 6 days after Aran posted his tweet about gay Orthodox, March 17, 2023, Father David Galloway made his comments to Jay on Twitter and then brown bag holding undesirable contents hit the fan. I successfully redirected the ire against Father David Galloway, current student, to myself. Dyer began tweeting about me non-stop, which I found funny. For a man supposedly trained in philosophy, he certainly relies heavily on ad hominem, encouraging his flock of internet sleuths to do the same. So much for Plato's rules for dialogue. Point 9. J. Dyer tweeted. Ben Gaby chimes in. We will be streaming about him Monday. Then some tweets/retweets by Wholesome Henry, rehashing the conversation between Dyer and Father Galloway. Well said, Father Galloway. And thank you. A survey of OCA and Antiochian clergy shows only 3.4% recommend J. Dyer, Orthodox ethos etc. all. As they create serious pastoral problems for clergy. JD and OE are lumped in here with the will, orthodoxy in dialogue and others. J. Dyer tweeted. Real Orthodox masculine piety from one of my chief attackers, LMAO Ben Gaby. Some random tweets. Recovering Protestant tweeted. How about Theoria, aka Cry Gabe Y? Montana Bot Farmer tweeted. That is Theoria, aka Ben Cabe? I've never seen a video of they/them. I'm already mysteriously blocked, of course. There is no way that this person is not a passionate homosexual, even if still closeted, which is rather unfashionable and even shameful in 2023. This is just a small sample of the creativity of Dyer's crew, laughing face. The next 3 days continued in like manner. I leaned into Jay's insults by including them in my Twitter bio, called out Jay's insults and slander, and clarified my intentions where able. Wholesome Henry tweeted. No one is denying that there is a minority of Orthodox in all jurisdictions that are trying to bring this nonsense into the church. The issue that Dyer isn't calling out this minority, he is making slanderous claims about an institution as a whole. As someone who has been personally slandered by Dyer, who called me liberal and in league with Orthodox folk at Fordham, I can tell you from experience that he makes baseless claims. Even a modicum of research would have revealed that I have publicly spoken against this minority agenda in the church and have been published speaking against it in various publications over the last 10 years, not to mention it is the subject of my book. So to reiterate, yes, these things need to be discussed, but Dyer is not doing that. He is slandering an institution that has been very clear about this, LGBT, COCA's statement on marriage and family life. Yes, there is a minority seeking approval of this, see the picture, terrible books might I add, but Dyer isn't talking about them. He's making up nonsense about people he personally dislikes. Books titled When Brothers Dwell in Unity, Byzantine Christianity and Homosexuality. By Stephen Morris. For I Am Wonderfully Made. Texts on Eastern Orthodoxy and LGBT Inclusion. By editorials Miss Hacherniak, Olga Gerasimenko, and Michael Brink-Skroder. Wholesome Henry tweeted. I'm not saying avoid Dyer because he's mean for what it's worth, I'm saying avoid him because he lies about people to smear their reputation, shows signs of narcissism, narcissist gaslighting, and serious mental illness, including paranoid delusions. I'm not even saying he's wrong about everything he says. I haven't watched enough to know. What I am saying is he is wrong about this, and wrong to constantly slander people for the sake of smearing their reputation and catering to his Orthodox bro culture audience. It's a warning for people not to get burnt by him. Many who once followed him have experienced this. He threatens them in private, calls them names, etc., etc., etc. It is not healthy. Elsewhere, others were beginning to speak out as well. But anytime anyone disagreed with Dyer, he immediately blocked them on Twitter, choosing to live in his insulated echo chamber rather than listen to the gentlest criticism, which is what started this, Father David's incredibly charitable explanation to Jay. What's interesting is that within the group of individuals dogpiling me and others speaking out against Jay, sacramental rigorism reared its head. Some Twitter responses. Strength Wave tweeted about Wholesome Henry being the worst Orthodox Christian on this website. Spint Orthobro tweeted, I'm not sure if he really is Orthodox, as I have a feeling that he never received the Orthodox baptism. Notice how this mimics Donatism. Which is exactly what I drew out in my article Rebaptism, Patristic Consensus or Innovation. If you haven't received baptism in the Orthodox Church, but only chrismation, then you're not Orthodox. I should not have to draw out the extensive problems with this way of thinking. Others claimed I was using Dyer as an excuse to dismiss Hears. AC tweeted. Ben Cape trying to use Dyer as an excuse to dismiss Father Hears and their little gotcha over the bishop issue is disingenuous. Though I like Dyer and his work, he is an adult who has been disrespectful and subject to critique. There's no excuse for dismissing Father Hears' entranium. But then something strange happened yesterday. Jay unblocked me and publicly challenged me to a debate. I mentioned that I have nothing to debate. My main concern is how he uses smear campaigns to discredit people that disagree with him, campaigns based on complete slander but that caters to his audience's predispositions, like calling me a liberal or pro-LGBT, etc. But I felt hopeful. Jay and I were actually in dialogue, sort of, for the first time. And to me that was progress. Now we have entered some instant messenger on Twitter. Jay Dyer. Open challenge to you to publicly debate your claim I'm wrong on the PSYOP stuff or any other topic you want. Response from Ben. Hey, thanks for unblocking me. Jay Dyer. How's that assignment from Archbishop Benjamin going? Why can't you come on and back up your claims? I'll give you the floor. Response from Ben. I don't know Archbishop Benjamin or Gallitzin. Dyer responds. Didn't you say you did? I specified he was after Father Hears and myself. Notice how the invitation is to debate. Following which he asks how my assignment is going from Archbishop Benjamin. When I say I do not know him, he claims didn't say you did. But wait, didn't he just accuse me of having an assignment from him? This points to another issue which I will call, nonsense talk. This is a tactic used by the woke mob all the time, specifically Judith Butler, who basically founded modern gender theory. It's talk past or talking around the person in front of you. So I clarify. Response from Ben. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm only referring to Archbishop Benjamin. 1. Kicking Metropolitan Jonah for not being liberal enough. 2. Sending attack dogs, including me and Galloway, to attack you. Dyer. Correct, I have good sources for that. So if you want to come on, you have an open floor. Ben. I appreciate it. After this conversation he blocked me again. But not before he responded to several tweets publicly. He claimed I was unwilling to debate. Either he, or one of his fans, called me a chicken, I can't remember who, but that's beside the point. And he and I engaged in the following tweet exchange. Wholesome Henry tweeted. I feel like we are talking past each other. I mentioned psyop in one tweet, but perhaps that wasn't the best term. What I mean is claiming myself and Galloway et al. Are attack dogs of Gloitzen. Not esoteric Hollywood or any of that. Dyer replied. Attack dogs of Benjamin. As I said many times. You told Chase you would happily engage me, so there's an open floor for you to come on and debate anytime. Henry replied. Engage, yes. I am not as keen on blue corner/red corner optics that debates imply. Dyer replied. As I have said many times, I am not a spiritual father and I don't give spiritual advice. I do philosophy and that's the domain of debate. So you or anyone else who takes issue with any idea I have is welcome to come on. I don't do tone policing arguments. Henry replied. That's honest and I appreciate it. I do have concerns about you recommending people don't tithe to OCA or go to OCA churches, the domain of spiritual direction, not philosophy. And again, with the false accusations against myself and others that I've seen time and time again. Dyer replied. I feel no regret recommending people not tithe to bishops who covered up gay scandals and have me on a blacklist. Here, Jay comments that he is not a spiritual father and does not give spiritual advice. This, however, is not true as you can clearly see. He is constantly giving advice that falls within the domain of the spiritual, specifically with his recent campaign against the OCA. The reason behind his campaign, though, became clear to me late in the day yesterday after our interactions. Apparently, Father Peter Heers and Father Zechariah Lynch are associated with J. Dyer. I did not know this until yesterday. Dyer replied. You have written articles going after people and good priests in my circles like Father Lynch and you did this to score points with Benjamin, spare me. Henry replied. I actually didn't go after Lynch. The article in questions was part of a larger article about Father Peter Heers and concerns there. Father Lynch wrote an article after he received this, unpublished, document attacking me, claiming I am pro-LGBT, and mischaracterizing my concerns over the use of Saint Pagios for a Protestant eschatology. After 2 years I published part of this doc online in 2 separate articles. At which point Lynch went after me again and reposted this unfortunate piece. Likewise, I vaguely remember email Archbishop Benjamin over concerns with Lynch, similar to Heers. But I never publicized this or published it in an article. That was my one and only contact with Archbishop Benjamin and I believe he simply said thank you or okay. Apparently, I wrote against what I thought to be a serious Orthodox theological error in pretense to score points with Archbishop Benjamin, even though I already told him I do not know him and he claimed that he didn't say I did. Father Zechariah Lynch, OCA clergyman, also on patristic faith, Inklispen, and I have a history, as you can see in the tweet above. He was the author of a slanderous article about me in which he claimed I was subverting orthodoxy with my modernist agenda. I ignored it. In his article, he included screenshots of my then community outreach website, associated with the mission we were starting, St. Brigid's. The screenshots showed that we don't care if someone identifies as gay or trans, and that they are welcome to come hang out with us. Tuesdays was outreach night, board games, coffee, tea, etc. The goal: allow members of the broader community to interact with Orthodox Christians, become friends, and develop relationships so that a door would be open to talk to them in a way that they may be able to receive the message, basic human being interpersonal relation stuff. At any rate, after I posted my article about Heers, November 2022, Lynch posted his article again, this time on the Patristic Faith website. That's when I decided to post my research concerning Saint Pagios and the Protestant eschatology of Heers and Lynch et.al., as Lynch had somehow gotten his hands on a copy of my research and responded to it, albeit poorly, in the same slanderous article a year prior. When I learned of their association with J, just yesterday, the broader narrative made sense. Let me explain. I recently had a run-in on Twitter with D.N. Ananias, Eric, Sarum. He posted that an Orthodox hieromonk is on the highway to hell because he converted to Catholicism. Again, sacramental rigorism. Mormon-style stuff. If you leave, you're going to hell no matter what. D.N. Ananias speculated in the comments that the CIA got to him. Sarum, or also known as the false priest, tweeted some frivolous things. I will not go into it as I post his tweets. He is a hypocrite. What's funny is that I know this hieromonk. I had dinner with him after he converted. I just wanted to hear his story, you know, basic human being interpersonal stuff. And he told it. As someone that knows him personally, I commented that he was not turned by the CIA and that to suggest such, or even think such, was ridiculous. I likewise continued to note that this behavior is indicative of paranoia and delusion, if not serious mental illness, of which I'm told D.N. Ananias was miraculously cured by God, so he doesn't have to take his medication anymore. D.N. Ananias blocked me immediately. I thought this was strange, so I did some searching and discovered that he was the founder of the Patristic Faith website. I also found that he recently moved to Montana to pursue a vision of an Orthodox utopia. With this in mind, he started a Monta-Nica conference, now Montanica. More pics posted about some stupidity from this false priest. Technically, he is an OCA clergyman, under the OCA Romanians, and moved without a proper transfer, from what I have been told. He tried to attach himself to a mission there in Montana and began holding meetings with the parishioners, behind the prevailing priest's back. I do not know exactly what happened, but it got ugly. And Archbishop Benjamin had to fly out to deal with him. Father Alexander Rental did as well. But D.N. Ananias ran from church discipline and began serving at the Serbian parish, resorting to his bishop, which I can only assume is plus Nathaniel of the Romanians, who he claimed publicly, in his Discord server, was protecting him. I can only assume the letters from the parishioners in Helena are from individuals D.N. Ananias successfully turned. I don't like using language like that, but this plays into a broader issue. The OCA clergy that was running the mission started to notice something strange. The parishioners stopped tithing. At the exact same time, Father Russell in Butte MT, Serbian parish where D.N. Ananias serves, noticed that their tithes were going up. There is a lot more to the Montana story. For bishops reading who are equipped to deal with this, contact me for names and sources to corroborate some major issues with D.N. Ananias and J. Dyer specifically, and please forgive me for posting this publicly instead of sending directly to you. But I believe that this must be the catalyst for change, including Father Andrew Moore's move there from Missouri for the same reasons as D.N. Ananias, although officially the story is his wife got a job there. Recently, he posted on the Orthodox version of a tabloid website, Monomos, a series of complaints against the hierarchs concerning their new clergy guidelines, which Jay has been tweeting non-stop. Why? Because these guidelines were created to prevent exactly what Father Peter Hears, Father Zechariah Lynch, and D.N. Ananias have done. Which is start an online presence or ministry and radicalize people with their specific version of orthodoxy. It is not healthy. And there is a lot more to say, about the Montana situation, about D.N. Ananias, Father Andrew Moore, Father Zechariah Lynch, Father Peter Hears, J. Dyer, E.T. al. But now is not the time. Perhaps the Assembly of Bishops will finally deal with the situation and the rest will not have to come out. The point, however, that I am making is that there is a group of individuals that are radicalizing young Orthodox converts, young men, specifically, encouraging them toward sacramental rigorism, global conspiracies, and end-times speculation while mobilizing them against individuals that have successfully thwarted their plans. ABP Benjamin, ABP Galitzine, when he spoke out about Hears a few years ago, me when I spoke out about Hears, etc. This is the reason for J. Dyer's recent slander and attack on the OCA. Are these men wrong in everything they say? Absolutely not. I've heard that these men have produced work that has been spiritually helpful. However, many of the laity are not equipped to sift the wheat from the chaff. And the chaff here being propagated can produce serious spiritual and physical danger. Certainly the OCA's silence on the COVID situation has not helped them. And this is one point that J and company continue to hit home, albeit somewhat indelicately. As I've stated elsewhere, I believe the OCA Synod did the best they could do at the time. But it would be good for the people for them to release another statement. From what little I know about synodal proceedings, though, it isn't as easy as just releasing a statement. The issue is, COVID should not be dividing us, the fact that it is points, yet again, to sacramental rigorism. But spirituality is not magic. This is something that sacramental rigorism cannot understand. It cannot parse magical thinking from spiritual life. To make a case that using different spoons is sacrilegious is nonsense. The spoon wasn't even used for communion until the 9th/10th century, likewise the idea that wearing a mask in church, not kissing the icons, and so on. Is it important to venerate the icons? Of course. But is it a hill to produce schism over? Be careful how you answer. And no. It's not indicative of a modernist agenda or a CIA plant or a liberalization of the church. The entire world was thrust into an unprecedented situation. And everyone did their best to cope with what was happening. There is a pattern. I should note that the OCA clergy here implicated, Lynch, Sarum, Moore, are all clergy that have been disciplined or attempted to be disciplined by Archbishop Benjamin and the Diocese of the West. Likewise, here's is a clergyman that no bishop will receive into his diocese, the reason for his bishoplessness since 2018. There is a pattern here. There is a pattern of disgruntled clergy moving against their hierarchs. There is a pattern of these same priests being vocal about their complaints to mobilize others against their hierarchs, and hierarchs generally. There is a pattern of ad hominem and blatant slander, a tactic used to ruin the reputation of those that disagree. There is a pattern of discrediting their detractors by calling them ecumenist and modernist. There is a pattern of the sectarian mindset. There is a pattern of paranoia bordering delusions. There is a pattern. The young men are dying spiritually and physically. Just to be clear, I'm not exactly Mr. Golden Boy in the OCA either. I wrote a private document last year and sent it to the bishops and metropolitan explaining some concerns I had with one of the institutions. It was a very revealing document. I don't think they liked it very much, though. Who wants to hear that there's a problem with something they take pride in anyway? I don't blame them. From what I was told by an insider, though, it was being said within those circles that I made up everything. This is categorically untrue. I drew exclusively from first-hand sources, but these sources were too afraid to speak up, as many of them are clergy or hold positions and could be disciplined for doing so. Yet I wound up not publishing it because I did not want to create public scandal. It wasn't worth it. I'm sharing this to say that yes, there are problems. No one is naive enough to think that a divine human institution will be bereft of any issue. But those heavily criticizing it, which includes the aforementioned far right, here's Dyer, Lynch, and far left, public orthodoxy, orthodoxy in dialogue, etc., are often conflating things, missing key pieces, and for Dyer at least, sharing completely false information about the people he is attempting to call out. And that hits another point. The OCGI event, as Dyer called it, was within the diocese of Archbishop Michael de Hulich, New York and New Jersey. I know Archbishop Michael. He is a good man. And although I haven't spoken to him in a few years, I am certain that his standing on this issue has not changed. He later confirmed with a parishioner that asked, and then posted to Twitter he did not know about the event and did not approve of it. Does this mean ABP? Michael should publicly shame the priest? No. That's not how pastoral care works. The bishops do not post reasons for suspension or defrocking for this exact reason. It's not really our business. I know. So what makes this my business? The predominating view of Dyer, Hears, Lynch, and the cadre of YouTubers together with their poorly produced YouTube videos and articles, has been to ignore them and their content and not comment on it. But that has not worked. And it will not work. Because the generation that we are now serving is far different than any other generation in history. They are being sold cognitive distortions, delusions, paranoia that they are already prone to, and they are eating it up. They are caught somewhere between the woke nonsense and far-right supremacy. And they are confused. They are hurting. They need direction. Direct direction. They need an alternate voice. The utopia promised by sacramental rigorism and the conspiracy-leaning Orthodox content creators is in fact no place. It is imaginary. It does not exist. It has never existed. A cursory glance at history will demonstrate this. Yet, this same rigorism, taken to its logical end, requires far more of the young catechumen than they can give in many cases. The young men falling for all of this nonsense have the abyss of nihilism on their left and the false promises of hedonism on their right. They know that the narrow path is difficult. And when they find the church, they are up for the challenge. This often pushes them, at least in the beginning stages, toward the more rigorist end of the spectrum. But when reality hits, when they fail, when their life falls apart, when they are broken, rigorism becomes yet another pharisaical burden that they can no longer carry. And as the case with many young men, they despair. And in some cases, they despair unto death. This is why I am speaking up. The vision of orthodoxy being sold to these young men and women is not a vision based in reality, it is not based in pastoral theology, it is not based in love. It is based in fear, fear of how society is encroaching on the church, how its hierarchs are liberal, how faithful Christians are receiving a precursor to the mark of the beast via the vaccination. What happened to Christ? Where is Christ? Yes. This article is too long. It will likely be hard to follow, as it has been stream of consciousness. But I believe in light of everything that is going on, in light of J. Dyer's slander, and forthcoming slander of me which will likely take place on one of his lengthy YouTube streams, in light of the fact that we have an orthodoxy that is divided, and being divided by poorly defined, catch-all accusations of ecumenism, liberal, modernist, and the like. The danger of not speaking out has surpassed the concern of speaking out and drawing more attention to these figures. Your flock is listening to them. Your flock is watching them. And if these content creators are turning them against you, against the hierarchs, against the canonical Orthodox Church, it's only a matter of time. If you think any of this is important, share. 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 If you think it is important for this to be addressed, sound the alarm. Share this article far and wide. I have done my part. Now you need to do yours. May 11, 2023, someone who used to be in J. Dyer, D.N. Ananias Eric Sarum, Chase Haggard, and David Erhan's inner circle recently spoke out. Find the article here. https://theop.substack.com/p/from-orthobro-to-utm_source=sign_UTM_campaign=post_medium=web. I fully expect to be the subject of more slander because of this article. If you have any questions, please reach out to me directly and I will do my best to address them. Here I am concluding with a list of individuals that are engaged in this behavior. J. Dyer, David Erhan, Chase Haggard, David Patrick Harry, Church of the Eternal Logos, Rush V, Father Peter Hears, Orthodox Ethos, D.N. Ananias Sarum, Patristic Faith, Father Zechariah Lynch, Inkless Blog, Patristic Faith, Glenn Chansey, founder of the Reactionary Orthodox Reflections website, Craig Truglia, Orthodox Christian Theology Blog plus YouTube, Father John Whiteford, Father Seraphim Holland, Father Matthew Bailka, Father Turbo Qualls, Father Andrew Moore, Abbot Trifon, Andrew Wilson, Rachel Wilson, Dissident Mama, E.T. Al. And anyone associated with these individuals or their websites, even if they are not complicit in delusion, by being a part of these websites they show a lack of discernment.